Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Take. Carrie Champion, Skip Bayless in studio, Stephen A. Smith in Philly. Good morning, Stephen A.
Good morning. How y'all doing? How's everything?
Good.
Oh, thank God he's not in Nashville. I thought maybe he had moved permanently to Nashville because he's now a proud honorary graduate of my school, Vanderbilt University.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I'm still a proud graduate of the university that honored me with a doctorate, which is
Lord.
Winston-Salem State University, HBCU, baby. Don't get it twisted. Yeah. But I will acknowledge this. I thought Nashville was trying to kidnap me. I was stuck in the airport for 7 hours yesterday.
Oh, good.
7 hours.
You deserved it.
Just want to throw that out.
You deserved it. I don't think anybody deserves to be stuck in the airport for 7 hours. That's brutal.
How about that, Carrie?
That is brutal.
I have zero sympathy.
All right, well, let's talk about what's on the show today, gentlemen. NCAA tournament begins, and some say the next 48 hours are the best days of sports. Do you agree or disagree? We discuss after the break. Plus, the Warriors beat the Hawks. Did Steph Curry help or hurt his MVP case? But first, Jerry Jones says he spent a significant amount of time researching Greg Hardy as a person and as a football player before the Cowboys officially signed him yesterday. Here's his quote. Obviously, a great deal of our study was dedicated to the issue of domestic violence and the recent events that associated Greg with that issue. We know that Greg's status remains under review by the National Football League. Our organization understands the very serious nature of domestic violence in our society and in our league. We know that Greg has a firm understanding of those issues as well. Take a look here. Hardy has a one-year deal worth $11 million. None of it's guaranteed, and Hardy needs to be on the roster in order to get paid. There's also $2 million in other incentives. The contract essentially protects the Cowboys if and when Hardy's punishment for domestic violence is issued. Now that we have the details of the contract, Skip, I'll start with you first because you were not a proponent of Hardy being on the team.
Nope.
Are you now comfortable with the deal now that you know more about it?
No, I'm not. And Stephen A., I always try to tell you in all seriousness here, I try to be an objective Dallas Cowboy fan. Again, I grew up a Cowboy fan. I can't help it. I was sort of born into it. I don't want to be a hypocrite. I will still root for my team next year. But I will not, under any circumstance, applaud this deal, even though it now appears, as Carrie just pointed out, to be effectively a steal of a deal for Jerry and Stephen Jones, given the talent of one Greg Hardy, who, as you pointed out, is, well, you went so far as to say, wasn't it Adam Schefter who called him the Ndamukong Suh of pass rushers, of defensive ends?
Yes.
He's one of the top ones. I'll give you that. I cannot deny that much. But Stephen A., it still feels wrong. And I saw a picture yesterday, if we could show that for a second, of, unfortunately, Jerry Jones sharing a laugh, yucking it up with Greg Hardy. And I got to be honest with you, it just hit me the wrong way. It made me a little sick to look at Jerry sharing a laugh with Greg Hardy. I don't want to beat this to death, but I got to remind our viewers again, Greg Hardy, in a bench trial, was convicted of assaulting a female and threatening to kill his ex-girlfriend. In North Carolina, Corky law gives you the right to appeal through a jury trial. And when Greg Hardy used that right to schedule a jury trial, the ex-girlfriend could not be found, according to the police, and it appears that he bought her off. So now how am I supposed to feel about this? He was convicted by a judge who said that it is now the court is now entirely convinced that he is guilty of assaulting a female and communicating threats. Entirely convinced. Well, why shouldn't I be entirely convinced? And I've told Carrie before, and you, Stephen A., I read her testimony, and that really turned my stomach. It was just evil. And again, we have to assume it's true, but that judge thought it was true. He got convicted, then it got thrown out because she was not there to continue to press her charge. So, again, how can I argue with the deal? Because Jerry and Stephen took most of the risk out of the deal. It's basically a week-to-week kind of a contract for one of the best pass rushers. So I can't knock that because at any given moment you can pull the plug and be out for not that much money. He's making the minimum salary, and the incentives could take it up to a lot of money, but he's going to have to continue to fly right. Jerry Jones saying all the right things. We've had conversations. He will fly right. Well, I don't know about that. I think he's going to pay a price to the National Football League, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. How much should that penalty be? I'm pretty sure, not completely sure, but I'm pretty sure he'll be suspended. So that's going to cost X games. But again, Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones won't have to pay that salary. It won't count against the cap. So again, a steal of a deal that still makes me a little sick at my stomach, Stephen A. And by the way, last quick point.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure, after all I've read, I don't know this for a fact, I'm pretty sure no other team would have touched Greg Hardy. I'm pretty sure even Tampa said in the end, no, we're out.
Yeah.
So we knew the Raiders were out, and I didn't hear anybody else. So I'm pretty sure it was Dallas or bust for Greg Hardy.
And his agent tried to sell the fact that he could have had the Bucks or the Seahawks, but we're not hearing
but
anything.
that was negotiated to me.
And we hadn't heard anything about
it.
So Stephen A., your take, are you any more comfortable with this deal now that you know the details?
Yeah. Doesn't bother me. I mean, my position was clear. If you all recall, what I said is that Greg Hardy is in no position to muscle his way to exorbitant dollars from the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys can simply sign him to a contract, make sure it's relatively non-guaranteed, secure themselves in that regard, make sure that they exercise a no-tolerance policy and move on from there. And I beg to differ with both of you when you say that you're pretty sure nobody else would touch him. I respectfully disagree. Eventually they would have, maybe not now, maybe not this month, but I assure you, come time training camp, Greg Hardy would have been on one of the 32 teams in the National Football League. I don't think there's any question about that. And I think the history of the NFL has proven it. Let's remember, everybody, that the reason why all of this blew up, whether it be Ray Rice, Ray McDonald, Greg Hardy, the list goes on, is because it became a national issue because it was learned not only through the video of Ray Rice, but other things that essentially the National Football League had turned a blind eye and a deaf ear to some of these issues, sullying its sport for quite some time. The National Organization for Women and others ultimately got intimately involved in it, bringing attention to it, heightening awareness of it, and it forced Roger Goodell to make some serious modifications within the National Football League office to address this matter. Skip is absolutely right when you say, Skip, that we do live in different times, and we understand that. And as a result, things that were once tolerated would no longer be tolerated. But all of this transpired at the time that it appeared to be tolerable, for lack of a better word. I'm certainly not accusing the NFL or anybody else to encourage it or anything like that. I'm just talking about the dereliction of duty they exercised in terms of bringing attention and bringing the hammer down on individuals who were guilty or even accused of such heinous acts. We all believe that if it is true, the allegations that were ultimately made against Greg Hardy, how he was arrested, how he ultimately went to a bench trial, and that the judge convicted him. If those things indeed are true, then Greg Hardy, in my opinion, should be in jail. Forget about playing in the National Football League. He should be in jail, or should have at least spent time in jail already. But Greg Hardy not only had the right to appeal the decision made by the judge in a bench trial, which ultimately would have taken it to a jury, but he has also categorically denied that there was any truth to what he says. Now, do I believe that? Hell no. Do you believe it, Skip? Obviously not. We understand that. But he is saying that it was a lie, that he's not guilty of what he has been accused of and ultimately convicted of. So Jerry Jones is sitting back as a National Football League owner, trying to win games and understanding that the NFL could ultimately bring the hammer down. And he's saying, wait a minute, here's your contract. It's non-guaranteed. We don't have to commit to anything for you. We can cut you at any time. We will do so if you find yourself remotely in any kind of situation like this ever again. And he has basically insulated and secured himself. Meanwhile, he's also put the onus on the National Football League. See, to me, we shouldn't be talking about Jerry Jones. What we should be talking about is the National Football League, because Greg Hardy is on the commissioner's exempt list. He has not been removed from that as of yet. We understand that a punishment for him is imminent. I would say a minimum of 4 games, since Ben Roethlisberger had an accusation, was never arrested, was never indicted, was never found guilty of anything, and he initially got 6 games, and ultimately it was dwindled down to 4. So if that can happen to Big Ben Roethlisberger, it certainly should happen at the very least to Greg Hardy. But in the end, the onus is on the league, to me, not the individual owner, that is Jerry Jones, because he's still on the commissioner's exempt list. He hasn't been removed from that as of yet. And last time I checked, there are a few women who have been hired by Commissioner Roger Goodell to oversee such matters and to counsel and advise him on what he should do moving forward. Considering all the machinations that have been put in place to address this kind of matter, I don't think that Jerry Jones has anything to be concerned about. He's completely covered on this matter, so I don't blame him for taking this leap to get Greg Hardy, because it really wasn't a leap at all.
Okay, I don't want to dwell on this too much. I don't want to read too much. Did you see the comments from that Ben Hartsock, the former Carolina Panther?
I did not.
If you remember,
you talk about his personality. Yeah, I saw that.
Okay,
yeah.
So just for those who have forgotten, Ben Hartsock played at Ohio State, was pretty good there. He's probably better in class because he was academic all Big Ten 3 straight years. He's a 3rd-round draft pick. Bounced around the league. He's been on 6 different teams, but he did spend 3 years in Carolina, which were 2011, 12, and 13. During those 3 years, just for the record, he caught only 2 passes. So he wasn't a big contributor,
right,
but he was there. He was on the team. And we're going to talk a little more later. We'll hear his comments. But just to summarize, he basically said that in a football context, personality-wise, that at times Greg Hardy can be unmanageable as a football player. Big mood swings. He'll be one guy one day, a different guy the next day. Now, again, I don't want to put too much into this, Stephen A., but I'm not sure he's going to fit into a close-knit team that was so close-knit last year. Now, again, DeMarco is gone, who was a big part of that, so maybe it's already a little bit fractured. But, again, I was around the guy I thought was the greatest pass rusher that I ever covered in Charles Haley. He was so unmanageable in San Francisco that they basically gave him to Dallas and gave Dallas the chance to win 3 straight Super Bowls with Charles Haley. They should have won 3 straight, but they didn't.
What do you mean by unmanageable?
I don't know what Hartsock's talking about. He's just talking about the mood swings that he's different guys, different days. But again, how many defensive ends have we seen?
We've worked with.
Yeah,
Stephen.
To me, Kerry, Skip, you don't even have to go there. There's something far more damning against Greg Hardy, and that's the 911 call from the neighbor, quoted as saying he's beating her, you know what, again. So apparently there are individuals who appear to be witnesses to his violence, which is why nobody believes him. I mean, the bottom line is simple. Again, to me, if he's guilty of such things, he should be in jail. And it certainly seems like he's guilty of it to me. I get where you're coming from, Skip. I'm with you. But we have an obligation to highlight that he denied it and that the NFL investigates this matter. And now they seem to have the infrastructure in place where they can somewhat get to the bottom of this in a fashion where a punishment that comes down upon him would be appropriate. So to me, it should be about them and not about Jerry.